Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Over one winter when I was about 15 or 16, every night there would be this terrible noise filling my room. It seemed to come from my ceiling, and you couldn't hear it anywhere else in the house except in the room directly below mine, because my floor vent connected directly with it, and all sounds transmitted really well through the floor. You couldn't even hear it in my sister's room across the hallway, though sometimes when I was in the hall outside my room I could hear it through my closed door. I could never figure out what exactly it sounded like. It was kind of like a grinding/groaning noise, almost like a heavy piece of furniture was being dragged across a wood floor back and forth. But there's nothing in the attic of our house. It's just wooden beams with insulation between them, no floor or pipes or air ducts at all. It happened every night, starting around 9 to 11 p.m., and continuing till around 5 a.m. I had to miss school several times because I couldn't sleep through the noise and fear, even though I had started wearing earplugs. My family thought I was making it up and kept brushing me off when I told them what was wrong, until I finally dragged my dad into my room just as the noises were starting one night and proved to him they were real. I honestly thought I was being haunted or going crazy, and since it was only in my room and only at night, it only made my fears worse. I was even talking to my one Wiccan friend who really believes in the supernatural, trying to find out how to cleanse the house or something. Then once spring came, they just stopped and never came back. Still no idea what caused it, but it was the worst winter of my life.
B9. I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming, USA. Big S Air Force Base in town, Francis E. Warren. Look it up. Used to military craft, can identify them easily. Warm summer night. Be looking out the window, right next to bed, sleepy thoughts. See large green circular light slower transiting south-north across town. Object emits pulses of soft green light. Object pauses over 3 places. Airport/military airstrip. F.E. Warren main gate entrance, which has a replica of America's 3 largest nuclear missiles outside it. Chemical manufacturing plant outside town. Object adjusts altitude and heading with precision movements, but not jerkily. Bright flash of green light and object shoots straight up. Huge rush of military aircraft rest of night. Helicopters, C-130s, but unusually also jets. Only time jets in town are for air shows or after September 11th.
These aren't my stories, but ones that my little brother told me. He's a geosciences grad student at the moment. He's been doing field work in Wyoming for about 4 years now, usually in summer. He's seen most of the wildlife there is to see up there, shy of cougars who apparently avoid their camps. He's also seen some weird shit that he couldn't explain. I'm fuzzy on technical details since we're that close, and I've never paid much attention to his studies, so most of the fieldwork stuff he told me is where things get a bit confused. I'll try not to go into any of the jargon-y stuff he told me since I'm sure I'd get it wrong beyond the basics. Anyway, the stories. Story 1. Day 0. Roughly 2-week undergrad externship program in Wyoming, spans over spring break plus a week. Dave shows up with 2 classmates from his program, Kelly and Junior, and meets the other externs. Total of 20 people in this class session. Going to be doing survey work and checking up on geothermal activity or some such. Taking core samples, mapping terrain and formations, Doppler readings, all that jazz. Students camping in tents, but there's a trailer to store equipment, a few outbuildings for cooking and showers, and a fence around the compound. Also 2 latrines and a semi-permanent shelter with concrete floor and tables. Rustic, but safe enough. Dave and Junior share a really swanky, big tent that got ditched at a previous internship by an international student. Common event apparently, since they can't transport them home easily. Kelly plants her single near theirs in the rough circle of tents. Orientation time. Class, divided up into 5 groups of 4 and assigned territory and tasks. Dave, Junior and Kelly are all in different groups. The first night is pretty quiet, but cold as balls, and there's a light dusting of fresh snow the next morning. Day 1 to 3. Everybody's up before first light to get ready for fieldwork, groups split up and head off. Each group has a supervisor, and are taken to their specific survey area in a truck by said supervisor. The first few days of work goes as planned, no surprises. A bit more snowfall during the first half of the week, but no problem. Day 4. On the 4th morning, while they're eating breakfast, Kelly asks if the boys came and tapped on her tent the night before. Dave and Junior say no, they were wiped and went straight to sleep. Kelly says she woke up with someone tapping at her tent just by her head and whispering her name. By the time she got up and unzipped the flap, they were gone. They decide it must have been one of her group members trying to ask her about the previous day's data, or the next day's work. Who knows, she decides to pursue it later when they go out to work. Day continues again as normal. Nighttime again, Dave and Junior shooting the shit before going to sleep. Hear someone tapping their tent at their feet before they go to sleep.
Is anybody there? Hello?
From outside the tent, sounds like Kelly. They turn on the lamp, open up the flap, but nobody's there. Figure she went back to her tent, light is on inside. Dave goes and asks her what she wants. No response, no one inside. Fresh snow again. Footprints leading away from her tent towards the latrines. Dave assumes she just wanted someone to walk over there with her, since it's dark as fuck other than the motion lamps. He shrugs, heads back to his tent and goes to sleep. Day 5 to 12. The next day, Kelly doesn't join them for breakfast and eats with her survey team instead. Don't get to ask her what she wants. Dave feels weird all day, and notices that his work team is really jumpy. One of Dave's workmates insists he saw a bear while they were in the field, and they decide that's why everyone is on edge. Some kind of primordial instinct can sense the predator lurking or some shit. Night rolls around again, and Dave and Junior are about to sleep when that tapping comes again.
It's really dark, I can't see you. Come out.
Kelly's voice again. Junior tells her.
Just a second and I'll turn on the lamp.
They open the tent, no Kelly. Her tent isn't lit up. Footprints aren't clear because there's been no fresh snow all day. Fuck it, they go and tap on Kelly's tent. Light turns on and she chews them out for waking her up again. Again? Dave apologizes and drags Junior back to their tent. Dave tells Junior about the bear one guy saw at this point. Junior makes jokes about skinwalkers on the mountain, and they both go to sleep feeling a bit on edge. Next morning, everyone in camp seems a bit out of it. People talking about the stupid pranks everyone else is pulling, and no one is getting enough sleep. Bear Cider mentions Dave tapping on his tent. Dave mentions Kelly. 2 other guys both mention someone else entirely. Almost everyone reports some kind of mysterious nighttime visitor that wasn't there. They're starting to get a bit paranoid and the supervisors tell them to knock it off with the pranks, there's work to be done. The pranks continued for the rest of the trip, but no one was hurt, turned up acting weird, or went missing. People were just jittery and ready to get the fuck out of camp by the end of it all. Summer internship time, sweet. Free day, so Dave and Mo, international student on his first time, go hiking. Pack lunch, Dave's gun, and bear mace. Head out into the woods. Beautiful scenery, fantastic views. They go do their thing and Dave is snapping photos to send his girlfriend back home. Suddenly, Dave notices Mo isn't beside him anymore. They're at the top of a ridge looking into a particularly picturesque valley. Lots of dense trees, not a lot of visibility. Dave doesn't panic, figures Mo had to shit and stepped out of view. Starts calling Mo's name. No answer, just echoes. Oh. Dave doesn't leave the ridge, but starts looking around for any sign of this guy. Nothing in sight, so he keeps calling the guy's name. Eventually he hears 3 blasts from a safety whistle. Oh. Dave starts to backtrack the way they came, figuring that Mo turned around before him and got lost, went off their trail. Another 3 blasts, this time louder. Dave keeps following the sound, but there's no Mo. By now, Dave thinks something fucked up is going on, and gets out the bear mace just in case. Apparently contemplated his handgun, but didn't go for it. He stops and waits to see if he hears any more whistles. Sure enough, 3 blasts, practically on top of him. Dave almost jumps out of his skin. Mo comes running down the hill out of nowhere and almost slams into him. Dave is pissed, almost bear maces Mo in the face, and demands to know where he went. Mo is equally pissed and demands to know why Dave left him standing on the ridge all alone. They confer and it comes to light that neither of them blew their safety whistle, though they both heard it. Both thought the other had wandered off the ridge and was calling for help. No more whistle blowing follows, no one else from camp was going hiking. Camp is isolated from normal camping areas or parks. Dave and Mo nope the fuck back to camp as fast as they can go, even though they'd planned to be out several more hours. Same summer internship as the story above. Hiking with a different intern, Joey. Everything's going good, they're looking for a place to chill out and have lunch. Find a little creek babbling away, only a few feet across and super shallow. Being geology geeks, they start discussing whether this should be on the survey or not. Outside target zone, but still possibly relevant because of the water source, etc. After lunch, they pack up and start to head back the way they came towards camp. Except it's not the way back towards camp. It's almost like they found a loop or some shit. Keep ending up back at that creek bed. After about an hour of this, they decide to just follow the creek bed for a while to see if maybe they just turned down the wrong paths. Stop when they find a weird little cairn on an island in the middle of this narrow creek. Geology geeks and rock hounds, so they notice the rocks don't match the area quite right. Pile of big chunks of limestone with a huge green quartz at the base. Deer skull at the top of the pile with the antlers crossed under it. Bleached from exposure, looks brittle and old. Dave says they should go back the way they came, because fuck that ritualistic looking horror movie shit. Joey agrees, but is weirded out mostly by the stones rather than the skull. No proper limestone deposits in the area apparently, and that kind of quartz is only in a specific part of the state. I wouldn't know, just repeating what Dave said here. They go back the way they came and finally get back on their trail properly. Dave tells me he thinks whatever built that pile of rocks, it wanted them to see it before they left. Like it was warning them to stay out of its territory or something. Dave and Joey went hiking another day with Mo, but couldn't find the creek or the cairn a second time. Dave was relieved because he didn't want to go back, but after the first hiking trip, Mo said he was curious. Through stupid circumstances, Dave gets separated from his work crew in the field. Middle of fucking nowhere on the mountain. Realizes he's lost. Fuck shit damn it. Has a map and GPS and all the safety gear he should have, but nothing is working quite right. E.g. compass is stuck and won't rotate to face magnetic north, GPS claims to have no signal, phone likewise has no signal and went from 80% charge to 5% in about 5 minutes. Fuck this shit, fuck it to hell. Against better judgment, he decides to try to find his way back. Dave tries to backtrack, but can't seem to go in a straight line. He finally sits down and considers blasting with his whistle to see if he can get attention from his group. Right as he's about to blow that whistle, a huge raven drops down from a tree onto a rock formation a little ways from him. Raven puffs up real big, and flies a few trees off with that croaky cawing noise they make. Dave's impersonation of the sound cannot be described with text, but it's hilarious. stops, and puffs up again watching him. Dave says he doesn't know why, but he decides to follow the raven. They don't generally come anywhere near people this far out. Just garbage if they can get it, so this bird was acting funny. Raven keeps up the leading game, flying a few yards ahead at a time while Dave follows. After about 30 minutes, Dave starts to recognize the terrain. After 45 minutes, he's almost back to the survey site, and the raven is gone. Didn't fly away, just disappeared when he looked away from it for a minute to get his bearings. Most of the other stories he told me weren't supernatural at all, just a bit eerie. He and his work crew ran into a bear face to face during summer once. At a distance of maybe 10 yards. It just looked at them for a few minutes, and went back to rooting around and doing its thing. They also had a pack of wolves show up and check out their perimeter fence another time. Nothing malicious, just curious and probably had smelled food or the like. They didn't come back. He had a couple of other spooky stories that were pretty bland. Things like his team encountering a guy in the woods where there were no habitations. And he wasn't carrying gear like a camper or hiker either. He looked a bit like a farmer who just strolled out of his field instead of a dense treeline. There was also a guy who got attacked in a lake while everyone was fishing. They decided to take a break, so he went for a swim. Had a huge row of bite marks in his leg, but they couldn't say what it was that did it. Eventually put it down to some kind of introduced gar fish and called it good. Nobody went swimming for the rest of that trip, though.
Cheyenne, Wyoming, USA here. Lots of stuff around here. Supposed roping spot along Industrial Road, where it's also said witches, covens, and Satanists would do strange rituals and summon the spirits of the lynching victims, that is apparently haunted as a motherfucker. The Atlas Theater is apparently one of the most haunted places in the US. The story I heard was that back when it was a hotel and a vaudeville theater, it was also a pretty notorious bordello. One prostitute had a young child, a girl, and because they lived in only a single room, the little girl would play in the closet while mommy did her business. Only one time a John gets mad and cuts her up, killing her. Meanwhile, her daughter is so scared that she doesn't make any noise, and died in the closet due to it being locked from the outside. Mother and daughter both haunt the place. There are these huge tunnels beneath the place too that I've seen myself, with lots of weird shit in them. Vivisected animal carcasses, little dollies made out of bird bones, weird scratches in the walls and stuff. I was in a play there a few years back and I was upstairs in the costume room, what used to be a suite in the old hotel, and I felt such a heavy feeling of dread and this intense presence, and I almost panicked. There's allegedly another spirit there that no one knows or recognizes from historical photos or documents. He's a tall man in a cowboy-type get-up, duster and hat and such like, but black as an ink spot, like a solid shadow. Let's see, lots of rumors of paganism, animism, witchcraft and whatnot at nearby rock formations called Vadowu. St. Mary's Catholic Church is allegedly haunted by the body of a Dutch bricklayer who fell into the concrete foundation of the building when it was laid and whose body was never recovered. Tom Horn, the famous range detective and alleged murderer, is supposed to haunt a hotel downtown. Cheyenne, and Wyoming in general, has a bloody and sordid past.
Plan an ATV trip with a friend out to an abandoned area of mines in western Wyoming. He gets sick and quits out of going on the trip. Go on the trip anyway carrying my bag and rifle. Come across a random mine and decide it's time to explore. Put on a gas mask and headlamp. Duct taped on, and enter the mine. Be exploring around the mine and walk down a semi-collapsed tunnel. Enter into an area where walls are splattered with blood and blood-covered tools and bandages lie around the ground. Pick over the stuff looking for something interesting to take with me. Suddenly begin hearing footsteps and moving around from a different nearby tunnel and begin to get the fuck out. Rush outward climbing and running hearing more footsteps. Get outside and rip off the mask, turning and watching the entrance into the mine while backing up to the ATV. Get on an ATV and drive away.
Small game hunting Wyoming. Two friends and I, let's say Kyle and Joe. Slow day, cap a rabbit with my Beretta .22. Later a friend shoots a squirrel out of a tree. We start to leave when we see this girl just sitting on a tree stump facing away from us. Apologize for firing a shot so near her, saying he didn't see her. No movement. We walk up closer to see if she's okay and see she's got a little blood on her shirt. Nothing alarming, but what you would get if a branch cut you up a little. Walk in front of her and she just has this blank stare that looks through you, not at you. Offer to take her back to our camp and without a word she starts walking with us still blank. Get to our tents and fire and she sits again. It's almost night, so we tell her we'll get her back to the nearby town tomorrow. Buddies share a tent, so she has her own. Mine is the smallest, so I get to sleep. Crawl out of the tent next morning, gears everywhere. My and Kyle's camera is smashed. A rifle's missing and the girls' tent stakes are all broken in half, which is a fear itself. Girls gone, we're all fearing bear attack. Send Joe to get to our Jeep and go to the nearby town for game warden help. Me and Kyle start searching woods with the tiny .22 in case she actually got taken by a bear. No sign of a girl anywhere. Start to get off trail onto a wet grassy area when we find a satchel on the ground. Don't go that way, I tell Kyle before he continues and slips on some grass. Walk into the clearing with the stump where we found her and get the smell of death rot. Dead possum, squirrel, rabbit, and even a deer torn to shreds. On the stump is a pile of blood and decaying innards, probably from the animals. Follow a small trail of some sort of hooves to the bottom of a small hill where a beanie hat sits on a branch. When I go to grab it, Kyle shouts, "There!" And all I see when I turn my head is antlers darting from the top of the hill next to a pine tree. We get to the top of the hill and Kyle's pale. Says whatever it was on its hind legs. I say it's just a deer. I saw the antlers, but I see the perspective of the pine to Kyle and it would have had to be taller than him. Officially spooked. We start heading back toward where our camp was and the forest is dead silent, which usually means a predator is somewhere nearby. Kyle hasn't said a word. He just has his Bowie knife out and is darting his eyes all over the trees. A loud shriek fills the word, sounds like Joe even though I never heard him scream. Run towards the direction it came from, shouting that we're over here. See Joe sprinting towards us so fast he almost passes us. He's holding his arm cut up worse than the girl was earlier. Says some large animal pushed him off the trail down a small hill into a thicket. Keeps rambling about how fucked up it looked, like an elk goat thing that was big enough to be a half-grown moose. Kyle says we saw it too. We basically say fuck the girl, we're outta here, we'll tell the wardens when we get to town. It's getting dark again anyway. Start trying to find the trail again, gun out. Don't go that way. I hear my voice but I didn't fucking say it. What the fuck? Kyle and Joe ask what and I tell them I didn't say it. Look sketchily behind us and see antlers behind a tree topping out at like 8 fucking feet. Before my eyes can even adjust, it dashes further into the trees, going from hind legs to a mad dash on all fours. Unload .22 at it, not even aiming to kill a 8-round clip in a second. The reply is some sort of hyena laughter. Nope, 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 fuck facing it. Even with a gun we all sprint back to the path. I'm the fatter one of the group, but today we're all even pace at death sprint speed. Load a new clip when we stop to catch breath, guzzle water. Look up and it's the fucking girl staring at us leaning on a tree. Crooked ass smile. Kyle's the first one to speak, voicing our what the fucks and asking what happened to our fucking camp. Shit. The reply is a fucking follow me wave and she begins walking back toward the beast. No, don't go that way. She continues. We don't move at all. After another couple yards she turns back. No crooked smile or blank stare. Just pure rage in her expression. The look you might get in the middle of a fistfight when you're ready to do some damage. We start to walk away and when I turn back she hasn't moved an inch. Same fucking face. Reach the end of the trail where they put the map of the forest in a display case. Smashed map gone. Get in the Jeep and bail. Contact game wardens and they say they'll send out a search party for the girl. Nothing is found and the tents we left are torn to bits. They all figure grisly. Give up on hunting and hiking for a year or two. Small epilogue. Kyle would go hunting at the same spot again many times and didn't have any negative experiences, although he did come armed to the teeth the first couple times. The stump where we found her had no dead animals and the forest wasn't dead-ass silent. He did mention one time hunting he ran into a doe, female deer, with its neck broken in a weird angle facing its tail with no sign of any animal feeding on it or hunter shooting it, which would have been illegal as fuck. I live south in Colorado now, but if I ever hunt in that thing again it's going to be within AK.
Stationed at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. This used to be an Army fort established in 1867 as Fort David Allen Russell. Not much to do out there because it is rather boring. Used to go for runs at night before going to bed because I enjoyed running, then taking shower and going to sleep. Crow Creek runs through the base, right where the Crow Creek massacre occurred. Heard sounds of screaming. Wasn't sure where it was coming from. Called security forces about this. Security forces investigated the screams and the sounds would shift and seemed to come from a different location. We all heard the screams but could not pinpoint where it came from. Security forces told me they get these calls quite a bit and they can never figure out where they come from. It was strange how we all heard the screams, so in a strange way we were comforted in knowing we were not hearing voices. It was put down to just a prank, but it sounded like something terrible was happening, but there was nothing there. I have seen some strange things there. I saw a group of what appeared to be Army soldiers in full cavalry uniform from their time period, blue, just appear and then took off running and vanished. Never told anyone I saw that. They wouldn't believe me. But when I go out running I am half afraid or half wanting to see more. Not sure what is compelling me to run at night. Heard the sound of voices hissing in some language that I didn't understand when I was out running. I could sense real anger and rage. Made the hair on the back of my head stand up. I said, "Get out of here," and it got quiet. Looked around and saw nothing but felt the presence of something evil. Kept that to myself, but from time to time I sense something following me around and I hear language that I don't understand or even know where it comes from. I am going to assume it is some Indian language. Old buildings make it even creepier.
Be me, at the time a senior in high school. Get invited on a camping trip with 3 girls and 4 dudes, have the hots for one of the girls, so of course I go. I live in Wyoming, we go camping near the Snowy Mountains, which are a northern extension of the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Only town nearby is Centennial, Wyoming, an old town founded from the workers of the Transcontinental Railroad, and has maybe a population of like 70 tops. Surrounded by a thick forest of lodgepole pines, random lakes and shit spread throughout. Not uncommon to come across abandoned cabins in the woods, in fact it was quite common, many were so run down the roofs had entirely collapsed. We set up camp near a rocky area, but have a big dirt pit where we make the fire. Having a lot of fun, drinking, smoking weed, hookah etc., and 2 of the girls start making out. Boner.jpg. All of sudden, one friend, dude I know kinda well, but not as well as the others, gets creeped out look on his face. WTF, man, calm down. He was an Asian mofo, named John, adopted kid, kinda weird but not autistic. He starts mumbling about shit in the trees and freaking out. After we all quiet down, we do hear shit moving around in the wilderness, but no one thinks much of it. Tons of animals in the area, everything from chipmunks to moose to bears, etc. For fuck's sake, it's Wyoming, wild animals are everywhere in the forest. He keeps acting sketchy, starts drawing circles and some other shit in the dirt. What the fuck are you doing, John, you weirdo? Runs to his car and grabs a shotgun. Starts pointing it at people and yelling random things. Oh fuck, we're gonna die. Everyone calmly telling him to stop pointing gun at people and calm the fuck down. Another sound in the woods, he immediately turns to it and starts chasing. Me and 2 other guys start chasing after him with a lamp and axe, but he has a head start. Finally found him, he looks super calm. Convince him to put the gun down and walk back to camp. We all go to sleep. Not long after, his shit freaked us out and we are not in party mode anymore. The rest of the trip was uneventful, though I made a point to avoid him in the future and haven't talked to him since. I think he was just drunk, but I have been drunk with that before and he would get all smiley / laughing at jokes etc. Not at all like he was then, but who knows. Pick related, from Google, but around the same area, Centennial, Wyoming. You fucks can Google image more if you're curious, plenty of abandoned cabins in the area. One isn't too far from the parking area for Medicine Bow National Forest, and if you walk in the right direction through the woods, northwest, you'll find it easy. We weren't too far from there.
Few months ago I finished some contract work in Cody, Wyoming, nothing special, just construction. The point is that I was near prime hunting areas. With just enough passing knowledge of hunting and a way to tell a story, while drunk, I frequented a few bars and basically told Inwood stories there as though they were my own. Rundown is basically, get to the bar, have a few drinks, mingle with people, if conversation steers to hunting, tell a few stories. Generally just tell weird shit that happened to me. Never mention missing friends or strangers or anything. Usually just weird animal carcass, can you believe it? Got me a few free drinks from strangers, which was my intent. Fast forward 8 months, nearing the end of my contract. In the middle of one of my stories, an older Indian fellow walks in the bar, gets a drink and hears me talking. The whole while he's dead ass staring at me. Story trails off, because he weirded me out. Later that night, I finished my drinks and called a cab. Waiting outside when the Indian taps my shoulder. Asks,
When was the last time you went hunting in that area?
Tell him it was 4 or 5 years, I lost interest in hunting. He nods and says,
You're lucky. Don't go back there for a few more years.
He heads off down the sidewalk as my cab pulls up. He was probably just fucking with me, but still. Posting my recent story. Be me, about 2 months ago camping next to an abandoned oilfield plant. 2 buddies with me, Caleb and Tyler. Tyler is new to shit, but he's pretty cool. Screw around and shoot in a ravine nearby. Go back for lunch, dinner, about 6-ish, and the sun is beginning to set. Tyler wants to shoot my AK a little more. Okay, sure. He mag dumps. My dad calls me and tells us to stop shooting for the night because our neighbor, who is supposed to be the next sheriff, thinks I'm shooting a machine gun or some dumb shit. Okay, call it a night of shooting. Later on, me and Tyler go to get firewood while Caleb watches the camp. On our way back, Caleb runs up to us and tells us he saw someone running out of the plant and towards my aunt's abandoned house, but he didn't shoot him because all he had near him was my AR. I don't believe him, but we decided to check out the plant and the house now because we were going to do it anyway. Clear all the buildings, nothing unusual. Leave the plant. Go back to camp to get our gas masks and the rest of our gear. Head to Aunt's house. Go to Uncle's reloading barn first because I wanted to loot some vintage gun magazines, but most were inaccessible now due to a fallen shelf. Oh well, Take what we can and go to the barns. Get to one with a freezer full of years-old rotted meat, and have to wear gas masks to go in. Go to garage, find, "fuck you," written on the side of a car's body. I write cheeky breeky next to it. Go to the house, yell, "If there's anyone in here, come out now." After a while of fucking around, we find a brand new, recently opened Coca-Cola can. Fucking nope. Leave a little after that and keep careful watch over the camp. There is now what I'm nearly certain is supposed to be a shitty meth cooker sitting in the driveway. Maybe he wasn't fucking with us after all.
A little background to start. I work as a topographer, tracker for a local group in Colorado and Wyoming. My job consists of surveying areas and mapping out common game trails and popular places for herds to gather for hunting and ecological purposes. When I'm out, I'm mostly on an ATV until I find a game trail, which then I map out on foot. When I'm going long distances, I stop at outposts that have been set up along the trail to refuel and rest for the night, or go to in case of hazardous weather. I've seen some things that have made me question what's out there, such as mutilated deer, bull elks torn in half, holes dug through the fresh body of animals from the inside out. While seeing things like this is unsettling, I usually shrugged them off as some kind of nasty parasite or bear attack. The thing that made me wonder whether or not I was up against something much bigger didn't happen till recently while near the Wyoming-Colorado border in between outposts in the first week of December. To start, it was snowing fairly lightly, kinda spitting really. The pines stopped most of the snow falling on me while I was walking back to my ATV. While it was snowing lightly, the layer on the ground was at least a foot deep off trail, making it pretty difficult to move or be quiet while lumbering through it. I got on the ATV and drove about a half mile up the trail, almost crossing over into Wyoming, when I noticed another trail that looked freshly made. When I got off the ATV, I noticed some small droplets of blood in the snow going down the trail, with what looked like bear prints with something dragging behind it. I grabbed my gun off the rack on the ATV and slung it over my shoulder. The trail looked fresh, but the prints and blood were starting to get covered in a layer of snowfall. While walking along the trail, I noticed something kind of weird in the middle of the bear tracks. It looked almost like a human foot almost, but rather elongated and thin, with only 4 toes on the end. The tracks twisted within the bear prints themselves, almost like the animal's foot spun a bit coming out of the bear track. I continued on while occasionally glancing into the track, and sure enough the prints were still there. When I went to the end of a large clearing, I stopped following the bear tracks. Something about being in this large clearing with an unknown animal was making me uneasy. I mapped it out and placed a red line over it, indicating a high predatory area. On the way back, I noticed something strange about my own boot prints. Now, I'm a pretty big guy, standing at 6'2" with a size 13 boot, but whatever had made the tracks had a footprint significantly larger than my own. But that's not the worst part. Whatever it was, I had followed my boot prints back, heading in the same direction I was. Whatever it was, it had snuck behind me and was heading towards my ATV. I shoulder my rifle and put a round in the chamber. I walked back, glancing down every so often to see if the twisted footprints were indeed still in mine. When I got back to my ATV, I noticed that the prints circled my vehicle and stopped behind it and shuffled a bit. I then noticed that my jerrycan was missing, and that thing had left a trail of gasoline down the road from where I came. I hopped on my quad to get going in the opposite direction, hoping to distance myself from whatever stole my fuel. After crossing over into Wyoming, I noticed that everything was rather still. It was still snowing, but the flakes almost seemed to be suspended in the air. Not falling, but not static either. I couldn't hear anything when my ATV was shut off. No animals, no snowfall, not even my own breathing. Almost like something had stopped all sound from existing. I found another game trail, this time a few hundred yards off the trail. I dismounted and walked towards the opening in the trees, with pristine snow covering the rocky terrain around me. All along the trail, I would catch fleeting glimpses of a shadow. Not shadows, no, just one, moving along the trail with me. I put it off to lack of sleep making me see things. On my way back, I got a chill up my spine. In my own boot prints were the same tracks I saw at the last trail. The same twisty human-like print, but this time, something was touching the ground in front of them. A swipe here and there, almost like whatever it was tracking me by my scent. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I reached for my sidearm, kicking myself for leaving the rifle on the ATV. I heard a ragged breath from my left, like if you collapsed a lung on a deer. I drew and fired into the trees, striking an aspen and blowing a hole in its small frame. I saw nothing. No movement, no snowfall, no animals. I started getting the same feeling I was getting from the clearing, and ran back to my quad. Whatever had been following me, beat me there. I followed the tracks around my ATV like last time, and stopped to see what it took next. It took my rifle, a large rifle that would require something very large to carry it off in its mouth, or something with hands and the strength to carry it. I looked a little closer at the prints, and found something I had missed every time. Inside the footprints, right where the twist ended, I noticed 4 very long appendages peeking through the twisted snow. It looked like a monkey foot, but longer and more hand-like, but not quiet enough to be human. I mounted and hit the throttle, spinning out a bit until I got traction, and went shooting down the road. I was too low on fuel to go back to the main road where I could get help, and was forced to go to my next outpost. When I arrived, the small cabin or hut-like structure looked so comforting and protective I almost cried. It had fuel for the quad, a safe place for me to sleep, and a radio for help. The sun was setting, and I was firing up the stove after starting the generator when my radio crackled and came to life. I jumped when I heard the static hiss. I ran over to the radio and requested an evac or an extra team for a safe escort. When asked why, I lied and said I was being hunted by a bear and lost my rifle on the trail. The voice on the other end scoffed but obliged. My team would be there by morning. When I hung up the radio and started to get comfy and safe, I heard a loud thump hit my door. I froze in my bed, not knowing what to do. I finally got up after debating whether or not just hide. I'm no coward, I thought. I grabbed my sidearm and walked towards the door. I peeked out the small window to see if someone or something was out there. All I saw was darkness. Stupidly, I opened the door and shouted, "If you don't leave, I'm going to kill you. You took one of my guns, but I still have the other." No response. I looked at my door to see what hit it, and only saw the remnants of a snowball. A fucking snowball. I waited to see if I could see any movement, when another snowball came flying out of the darkness to my left and hit my shoulder. "You better run, or I'm going to fucking kill you," I yelled, as I slammed the door shut and ran out to confront whatever threw the snowball. I ran towards where the ball came from, watching for prints or signs of movement. I saw something in the darkness that looked like a man had fallen, and was scrambling on the ground to get up, making that raspy breathing noise. I stopped and aimed, but saw that whatever was in front of me had continued to run on all fours at an alarming speed. Faster than I could run. I froze when I saw the black silhouette dart off into the darkness, not sure what to do. After listening and hearing nothing, no breathing, no running, I headed back to my hut. Once I got to the clearing my hut was in, I stopped. Relieved I had made it out of the woods alive. I took a deep breath and calmed myself down, and started walking towards my cabin, illuminated by the lone porch light on the deck. I looked down, trying to follow my tracks back to conserve energy, and nearly vomited. The twisted footprints were in my tracks, heading towards the cabin. I saw the trail heading back towards my cabin, each twisted footprint slamming down into my own until it got to my porch. Amidst all the snow dragged on by the thing, was my rifle and jerry can, placed neatly on the porch, leaning against the wall. The door was asked and jarred open a bit. I could have sworn I saw the leg of the thing dart in as soon as I looked at it. I wish I could say I bursted in there and shot the thing dead, but I was too frozen with fear to do anything but stand there. I wish I could say I was brave and fought the good fight, but I didn't. I crumpled onto the ground, cradling my knees until sunup. I had spent 6 hours in the darkness, waiting for whatever that thing was to come out and finish me. But it never happened. My crew found me covered in snow with my gun drawn and pointed at my cabin. They questioned me and searched the cabin. All of my food was eaten. My bed was torn up and made into a makeshift nest thing like a dog would sleep in, and the radio was destroyed, but no sign of whatever was hunting me.
I was camping with my sister and our horses at least 2 decades ago in Wyoming. The first night when we set up camp, the horses were getting spooked in their makeshift pen, electric wires with stakes we can set up quick. I went to check on them, and as I went near, an awful smell hit me all of a sudden. On the rear of my horse was a sticky sap-like substance. No trees were near the pen, with flower petals stuck all over it. Was so odd because the plains we rode through were bare of the lilac, yellow, and amber flowers stuck on her. I brushed them off, said goodnight to my sister, then we went to bed. In the middle of the night I woke up and had to take a pee, so I grabbed my rifle and walked out of the tent. Before finding a nice tree to go behind, I checked the horses, and they were so unusually ecstatic. Both were pacing and breathing heavily while saliva was dripping from their mouths. It wasn't any medical issue, but seemed like the behavior horses have when about to mate or are overly excited. I leave them and walk maybe 20 yards from camp when all of a sudden it's that same smell from earlier. Like a rotting, sweaty, trash scent. Then I hear something quite large break brush another 20 feet or so from me. I draw my rifle and wait to hear it again, but nothing. I whistle 3 notes slowly to announce my presence and see if it will startle the coyote or whatever enough to make it leave. All of a sudden it whistles the same melody but backwards and in a much deeper pitch. I'm starting to freak out, so I raise my rifle when I see an at least 7 to 8 feet silhouette emerge and feel the bush in front of me in the moonlight. Pale and gray with long limbs, short fur lines the outside of its shape, but I can't make out the face because the moon is at its back and in front of me. I fire a shot, but I think it missed, and in the brief second of discharge the flash shows a gangly frame of what looks like a goat standing up. I fire one more shot and run to camp as I hear the horse neighing and squealing in an ecstatic frenzy. My sister is already out of her tent with her rifle as I get back and tell her what happened. She assures me it was a bear, but I have seen hundreds in my time living in Wyoming and I know it wasn't. We stay up until daybreak and head back to the farm as fast as we could. I know she still doesn't believe me, but my grandmother, who was very keen even into her old age, knew I was being truthful. She is the one who told me of the creature/deity Pan, and how animals go into manic ecstasy in his presence, and how he will adorn them with his essence and the gifts of Mother Nature. I truly think he is who I experienced that night.
Be me. GF and I out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, on her family farm. 1,000+ acres. Cattle begin freaking out for no apparent reason, figure it's a coyote. Akbashes roam free, so think nothing of it. Light flies up abruptly and hovers mid-air. Can't really make any definite shape out because it's pretty far away. Tell girlfriend it's probably ball lightning. Starts moving toward us, still can't make out shape, decide to walk toward her house. Dogs start fucking howling, cows are being pretty noisy. Coming toward us faster, decide to run. Bright light illuminates the field as it gets closer. Run inside and fucking hide with a shotgun. 2 hours later the doorbell rings. 2 huge cops at the door and wanted to know if we saw anything suspicious. Tell them we thought we saw a fucking UFO. Cops tell us it was a military exercise. Say alright, thank you,
they start walking back to their car and it's a black SUV. No lights, nothing. When the cop gets in, he kind of hops in without touching any part of the car to assist him getting into his vehicle, which seemed so strange. Very odd night.
So this story comes out of Wyoming. The sightings of the ghostly ship are localized along the Platte River. As you can see, much of it is surrounded by trees, and it was through these trees that a trapper named Leon Weber was walking one day, when suddenly a mist settled over the whole area. Weber was caught off guard, and he stood there a moment, looking around him. The mist became a heavy rolling fog, and suddenly he saw a ship emerge from the fog on the river. It was relatively close to where he was standing, and he watched as it approached him, closer and closer. He could see the crew on deck looking in his direction, as though watching him. So now we have Weber watching the crew, as the crew stares back at him ominously, when suddenly the crew steps back to reveal a body lying on the deck, apparently dead. Intrigued and disturbed, Weber continues watching the ship as it approaches until finally he can see the face of the dead person. It's his fiancée. Weber is mortified, and he can hardly move as the ship sails past him back into the fog, at which point the fog dissipates and Weber scrambles out of the area and races home. Lo and behold, he discovers that his poor fiancée has died. There were others who had the same experience along the Platte River. A cattleman named Gene Wilson spotted it in 1887 and saw the body of his wife laid out on a canvas. She too died. In 1903, Victor Hybe was chopping down a tree on his riverfront property when he spied the ship. Laid out on the deck was the body of a close friend. This story repeats over and over again, sighting after sighting, throughout the years. It's difficult to say with accuracy where exactly these events occurred. Some say it happens near the Bessemer Bend of the Platte River, while others say it occurs about 6 miles south of Guernsey. But every known case was reported in the late fall, and in all cases the person seen upon the deck of the phantom ship died on the very same day.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.